Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the really complex and contradictory legacy of Lord Curzon. He was, without a doubt, one of the most brilliant, energetic, and, controversial viceroys of British India. Here's the puzzle. This was a guy who meticulously modernized India's administration and even preserved its ancient monuments. But at the same time, he drew a line on a map that would literally ignite a nationalist firestorm. So we're going to dig into how his relentless drive for efficiency led to some of the British Raj's greatest achievements and also one of its most disastrous political mistakes. All right, so here's the plan. We'll kick things off with the man himself, his mindset as an autocratic reformer. Then we'll see how he went about forging a modern India with his policies. After that, we'll zero in on that pivotal decision to partition Bengal, the explosive reaction it caused, and finally, we'll try to make sense of his very paradoxical legacy. Okay, so to really get what Curzon was all about, you have to get inside his head first. When he showed up as viceroy back in 1899, he came with a very specific and, let's be honest, a very rigid worldview. Curzon was, he was the poster child for British imperialism. His staunchly racist belief in a British civilizing mission, that wasn't just some casual attitude, it was literally the bedrock of every single thing he did. In his eyes, Indians were fundamentally inferior, so he figured they were just incapable of governing themselves. This led him to be this autocratic individualist, totally convinced that the only way to run India was through a top-down, hyper-centralized system where he, personally, could make sure everything was efficient and orderly. And believe me, this obsession with efficiency, it wasn't just some abstract idea in his head. He put it into practice with a massive overhaul of India's administration. In a lot of ways, he really was a master builder, applying that centralizing impulse to modernize the entire machinery of the state. And you see this same playbook over and over again. Just take a look at two supercritical sectors, railways and police. Before he got there, railways were kind of just buried inside the General Public Works Department. And the police forces, well, they were a patchwork of different standards across the provinces. His solution was simple, direct, and the same for both: centralize and professionalize. So for the railways, he set up a commission with one clear mission: make them better and make them profitable. And the result was a dedicated 3-person railway board that took charge, streamlined everything, and oversaw this huge expansion of the network. This is Curzon 101. See a problem, create a specialized team, and give them total control to fix it. And he did the exact same thing with the police. It's like he had a blueprint. A commission in 1902 laid out the plan for a modern, standardized force. We're talking better pay, more officers, and actual training schools. And crucially, it also created a Central Criminal Intelligence Department, the CID, to coordinate investigations across all the provinces. He was building one unified system out of a total mess. His passion for order even went as far as history. He was apparently horrified by the neglect of India's historical sites, so he passed an act to create a whole department just to protect and restore them. Isn't that something? The same guy who saw Indians as inferior did more than any viceroy before him to preserve their incredible heritage. But this same drive for imposing order would soon be applied not just to buildings and railways, but to people. Right, so this centralizing impulse, this obsession with efficiency, wasn't just for infrastructure. Curzon was about to apply that same cold, hard logic to the political map of India, and that led to his most infamous act, the partition of Bengal in 1905. Now, to really get the scale of this decision, you gotta picture Bengal at the time. It was this huge province, the absolute nerve center of British India, with a population of about 80 million people. That's 8 crore. Just massive. So, on paper, the reason they gave was pure Curzon logic. Hey, this province is way too big to manage effectively, so splitting it is just going to make things more efficient. But the real reason, well, that was something else entirely. It was a classic, textbook imperial strategy of divide and rule. The true goal was to break the back of the growing Indian nationalist movement, which had its heart and soul in Bengal. And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Just listen to this quote from the British Home Secretary at the time, H. Risley. He lays the whole imperial game plan bare. They knew a united Bengal was a political powerhouse. Their solution? Shatter that unity. This was never about administrative ease. It was a political hit job. So, yeah, this wasn't just drawing a line on a map. This was a calculated attack on what the British saw as the very core of Indian nationalism. Think of it like a 3-pronged attack.
Politically, they wanted to weaken the Bengali intelligentsia, the educated class that was leading the charge for independence. Socially, they wanted to drive a wedge between Hindus and Muslims by creating a new Muslim-majority province. And economically, they tried to break the jute economy, the system where Muslim farmers in the east supplied raw jute to Hindu-owned mills in the west that basically held the two communities together financially. But, and this is a huge but, Curzon got it spectacularly wrong. Instead of putting out the flame of nationalism, he poured gasoline all over it. The partition ignited the Swadesi movement, a massive nationwide campaign of protest, boycotts, and promoting Indian-made goods. The reaction was just immediate and incredibly powerful. People boycotted British goods, they filled the streets in protest marches singing patriotic songs, and, in a direct slap in the face to the divide-and-rule tactic, Hindus and Muslims would tie threads on each other's wrists as a public symbol of their unity. It was a cultural and political awakening, immortalized in songs like Rabindranath Tagore's Amar Sonar Bangla, which, would one day become the national anthem of Bangladesh.
And this, right here, brings us back to that central paradox of Lord Curzon. The master administrator, the builder, the guy who wanted order above all else. He had just unleashed a wave of popular protest unlike anything the British Raj had ever seen before. The protests were so huge, so sustained, that the British actually had to backtrack and revoke the partition in 1911. But the damage was done. Curzon's policy had deliberately injected communal politics into the landscape, and the seeds of division that he planted, well, they would tragically sprout in the decades to come.
The irony here is just staggering. Back in 1900, Curzon had totally dismissed the Indian National Congress, saying it was tottering to its fall. Yet, as the historian Dennis Judd points out, his actions did more to fire up and strengthen that very organization than anything before it. The movement he tried to kill, he basically gave it a massive shot of adrenaline.
So it all leaves us with this one massive question. In his relentless, autocratic quest for imperial efficiency, did Lord Curzon, the great builder of the British Raj, actually end up engineering the foundations for its eventual collapse? A master of control whose greatest legacy, perhaps, was unleashing a movement that would spiral far, far beyond it.